All right, everyone, welcome to another video. This video is literally like one of the most I think if not the most important, but it's a very powerful video in the sense that the amount of flexibility having the knowledge of what we're going to be discussing gives you, which is literally API HTTP request. It's one of the very fundamental things to learn in automation. Whether you're going to be working with n8n, with make.com, with Zapier, I mean, all of these, they still fall under they use the same underlying principle basically, which is apps, communicating with one another. But I mean, if this is your first time watching or learning about APIs, HTTP requests, I can guarantee you that you're going to understand it. I can guarantee that after this video, you're going to understand everything about using the HTTP request. Now, so let's start. So what is an API? Now, literally, like you can see here, so it's actually just a set of protocols that dictates or that literally guides how apps, servers, or softwares interact with each other. Again, if this is overwhelming to you, just take a chill pill. Take a chill pill. Really, you're going to understand it. Let's just have a very basic understanding first, and once we have that understanding, we then can layer on that understanding. So that's what I want to build with you. We have the very basic knowledge of what this thing is, and then we start to build up on that gradually so that it makes sense. So, like I said, an API is literally just application programming interface. That's a set of protocols that guides how apps interact with each other. Now, to make sure that we really understand this, so how does this apply to automation? Now, so what are we doing in automation? In automation, we're actually just replacing a manual process, with systems that can then take over that manual system, literally. So let's say, for instance, there's this illustration, So let's say I'm building on my public profile on my X account. So what are the things I will likely do? Now, so what I'm going to do, so if I want to post content for like a week, let's say, one of the ways I want to do it is to literally have a content calendar where I have the things I want to talk about throughout that week, and then I paste it in a database. Let's say here I'm using Google Sheets, which is what you're seeing here. What I'm going to do is, I'm going to either ask ChatGPT to create the content for me, or I write it myself, and then, I go and store them into this my database, which is Google Sheets. Now, what would I then do? I'm going to, let's say now it's on Monday, I want to make my first post. I'm going to go and copy, the data from this Google Sheets. I copy that data, and then I go into my X account and then make that post. On Tuesday again, I do the same thing. Let's say I want to post by 9 p.m. I go again into this database, which is my Google Sheets. I copy what I want to post for that day, that content for that day, and then I log into my X account and then make the post. Now, this is what the manual process look like. Now, what does it look like when we automate this process? So let's look at here what we have here. Now, this circle represents the automation platform, where the magic happens. In this case, let's just I use n8n mostly, so this is n8n. This circle represents n8n. Now, what would that process look like when we automate it? Now, literally, what's going to happen is, so let's say usually I'll make my post around, let's say, 7 p.m. What I can then do is add a schedule trigger and make sure I configure that trigger that once it's 7 p.m., data or the content for that day is going to become dragged from this Google Sheets, and then to be posted to X. Now, but for the content for that day to be posted from this Google Sheet to X, it means that this Google Sheet needs to communicate with X that, okay, I have this data that I want to make and I want to post. This is the data. Accept it and make the post. Literally, it's going to communicate with X, and then X, if I speak right, or if this database, this Google Sheet here, speaks very well, speaks the language that X understands, X is going to make that post and give a response back. So literally, that is Google Sheets communicating with X. Now, what facilitates that communication is an API. I hope up until this point we are understanding APIs and how this communication goes. Now, so how does apps communicate with each other? Now, that means that, like I said again, through using of API and through the use of API. So what that means is that literally API allows us to communicate with any app, any software, any server, literally on earth. And that is why from anything you can set up a Gmail automation system, where you can literally retrieve your emails, create email drafts, send email and everything like that. It is possible because anything you need to communicate with the Gmail, your email via an API. You want to communicate with Slack, you want to communicate with your X, like we explained earlier, it is through the use of an API. So, like I said earlier, so how does these apps communicate with each other? Now, this is where HTTP requests and webhooks come in. Now, I mean, learning this thing when I started out into automation confused me a whole lot. I'm going to be very honest, it confused me a whole lot, which is why I feel like I have, I can just explain it very well to you because I understand what it means to be overwhelmed by this concept. So let's start. So, what is an HTTP request and what is webhooks? Now, again, I feel like to understand this thing, let's use a practical example. So let's say this is a man. This man has a wife. Literally, this man, this is the wife. But let me use myself to make it. Let me just use myself as the example. So let's say this is me, and this is my wife. So literally, let's say she's going on a trip. So I have a wife, and then this wife is going on a trip. Now, so let's imagine two communication systems. Now, in the first communication, I'm going to be calling her. So let's say it's a 5-hour trip she's going on. I'm going to be calling her every, let's say, 1 hour. That, oh, have you gotten to this point? Where have you gotten to? Are you safe and all like that? So she tells me she's fine. Okay. I call her again the next hour again. Hey, have you gotten here? You've not gotten. Oh, you've not gotten. It's fine. And then again, I ask again, like that's the third hour now. I keep asking. Now, in that scenario, so every 1 hour I'm calling, this is me, making the call. So let's say this is me making a call to her. That literally I'm fine and all like that, That's sorry, that where is she, and then how is the trip, literally. Now, in this instance where I'm calling her, to find out her location, her safety, I'm making a request that okay, what is your location? I need to know where you are, I need to know how you are doing. Now that is literally an HTTP request where this is me, I'm the client interacting with a server, to get something or to make the server do something. So I'm calling this instance, I'm calling her now to get a location and a safety. Now, so let's say, of course, this is what if you have a partner, literally you want to find out how the person is or how the person is faring the trip. Now, but also, life exists in balance. Now, let's say imagine now. So in the first scenario, I said I was calling every 1 hour. So let's say I'm calling like twice every minute. It starts to raise alarm because let's say in the trip, if I want to, okay, let me just catch up on my favorite movie or my favorite TV show, or let me use this time to just, read a book. Maybe she likes to read, or let's say listen to music. And of course, she has to keep tabs with me on how our trip is going. But let's say I'm calling her every single minute, every single minute. I'm sure, like within the first 1 hour, literally, she's going to be like very irritated now or harassed that, hey, calm down, I'm fine. But literally, do not need to call every because I have other things I also want to do. Now, this is the same way too we have in systems, where there's something called an API rate limit, where the server is trying to do other things, so there's a limit to how much you can interact with this server. You're going to see sometimes maybe you understand it that when you see that rate limit exceeded or quota exceeded, literally that's what is happening. It means like you're bombarding that server with so many requests that it cannot handle at that particular point in time. Because of course the server has to interact with as it is interacting with you, it has to also do other things too. So literally I am making a call to her, but she's going to of course pick my call, but she also needs to like do other things, probably to just take a nap on that trip, to eat, to like I said, see a movie, to listen to a podcast, anything. So she has other things she's doing. So making a call over and over and over and over again is just going to be too much. So, but like I said, in this first instance, I am the one all through that is making this request to her. That where is she and how is she doing? Now, but then the second scenario now is that I'm not going to tell her, okay, when you get to where you are going, call me. In the first scenario where I was the one making that call every 1 hour that okay, where have you gotten to? Now in the second scenario, I'm just going to tell her that okay, when you get to this particular location or when you've gotten to where you are going to, call me. So whether that takes a week, whether that takes a year, I'm not going to call at all. Of course, this is not going to happen in the real life scenario. You need to call your partner, but this is just for illustration purposes. So literally now is until she gets to this particular location that she's going to get to, that she's going to make that call to me. And that is the distinction between an HTTP request and webhook. Now, HTTP request, me, that is the client, I'm the one making the request, that, hey, where have you gotten to, or help me do this. I'm always the one calling. I'm always the one, okay, I need to help me do something. But for webhooks, an event needs to occur first, on the server side. And once that event has occurred, I can then, the server alerts the client that, okay, this event has occurred. You can then, do whatever you want to do. So that distinction, where the client here makes the request to the server about a particular thing, it's HTTP request. But on the other hand, when the server, pushes an alert to the client, that's a webhook. Say for instance, now you want to build automation that involves using, let's say Stripe, Now once a payment occurs, it sends an alert to n8n. You're going to have to use a webhook in that regard. Now, so there's, initially I was saying, okay, I'm calling every 1 hour. So I can decide to call, let's say, every 30 minutes. I can decide to call, every 2 hours. That is my decision. Now, but in APIs, in HTTP requests, they call that, polling. So usually you're going to see that, if you look at here, so this is just a snapshot of what a Gmail trigger, which is literally an API request to Gmail. You can see something here called poll time. So if I zoom in a bit, you can see poll times here. You can see the mode is every minute. What this means is that n8n is going to be asking my Gmail server that, okay, do I have a, because since this is a trigger, you can see literally a Gmail trigger. What this means is that every minute, because this is the poll time, the mode is every minute, that every minute n8n is going to be asking my Gmail server, do I have a new Gmail? Get me a new email once the email arrives. Every minute is going to literally make that call to Gmail. But if you see a snapshot of what a webhook node looks like, so this is a snapshot of what a webhook code looks like in n8n. Literally, you can see we have no poll time here, because like I explained, earlier, that is when the event occurs, the client is not doing the calling. Is when the event occurs on the server side, that we're going to have, an alert being pushed. Recall when I said, just a person, let's say someone is owing you money. Now you can decide to be calling the person, depends. You want to be calling the person every day. Hey, do you have my money, or something like that? I want to call every week. That is you making a request that, okay, I need my money. Do you have the money available? But let's say, of course, you borrow someone money, and you're like, okay, whenever you have the money, let me know and send it to me. Unlike in the first instance where you were the one making a call. In the second instance, for webhooks now, it is the person that is owing you money that is going to let you know. So whether that takes a year, whether that takes 10 years, whether that takes 50 years, is when that person has the money, the person then reaches out to you, hey, I have the money, this is it. That is a webhook, where the server literally will push the notification to the client side that, okay, this event occurs and this is the alert for that event. So that is the distinction between literally HTTP request and webhook. So now, again, to understand, again, my point is I want to make sure that this is as very, very simplified as possible. So let's look at this scenario where, you go to restaurants, So what's the process that happens when you go to a restaurant? Likely when you sit down, you'll be given a menu, or you are going to have the menu on the table. Now you're going to go through that menu, look at what they have, what catches your eye, what you like to eat. And once you have that, so the first thing is you check the menu for what is available and what you like. Now once you have that, of course, you signal the waiter to come, and then you, the client here, which you are the person, tells the waiter, okay, this is what you like to order. I mean, really, there's really no restaurant that you talk directly to the chef in the kitchen. You're not talk to a waiter, and then the waiter takes your order to the kitchen that, okay, this person wants this order. So in this instance, I want pizza. I've checked the menu. Oh, I want pizza. The waiter takes that order to the kitchen. Now the kitchen, okay, like makes that pizza, and then it communicates back to me that, okay, this is your pizza, and then I have, eat the pizza. So what does this look like, in automation? So again, working in n8n, you want to communicate with a server. Let's say this is Gmail. You want to communicate with Gmail. Now, literally, but like I said, the good thing is that n8n has already configured this for us. But let's say I wanted to send an HTTP request. I have to go and search for the API documentation, and it's very easy. It's just as simple as going to Google, typing the server you want. Let's say Airtable, then Airtable API documentation. You're actually going to see that. So you're going to read the documentation for, okay, how do you configure the message you want to send? Now, once you've done that, you then use an HTTP request, which in this illustration is representing the server here. Is representing the waiter instead. You configure the message in this HTTP request, and then it takes that to the server that, okay, I want this data, or take this action on this server, and the server does that. Let's say it fetches that data for you. You want to fetch the data, fetches that data for you, and sends you a response through the HTTP request back to your n8n. So you can see our HTTP request is just that intermediary that enables different apps to communicate with each other, because literally that's the basis of automation. Because if these apps cannot communicate, automation cannot happen. If you want like first instance now, data to be sent from your Google Sheet to X, or let's say data to be sent from Gmail to let's say Google Sheet to go and be saved. Literally those two apps need to communicate with each other. So what makes that happen is an HTTP request. Now, if you open n8n, which I'm going to do later, this is a snapshot of what an HTTP request looks like. So we have the method, URL, authentication, then you can see query parameter, send header, send body. So literally we have like 5, the method, URL, and these other 3 parameters to discuss. Now initially this might feel very overwhelming, especially when you do not know what is happening, But like I said, this video is to enable you to understand that. So let's start with the method. Now, so we have the get, the post, the push, and the puts, the patch, and delete. So like 99.99% of the time, you're going to either be using the get or post method. But again, this is not hard at all. So just let's follow let's follow the logic here. So let's say in this instance where I give, where I want to ask for the location. I'm asking for the location of my wife here. This is my wife. This is my wife. I'm also asking her for the location. So I am the one that the communication I want here is to get information from her. Information about her location, her safety. I need those two information. So I am requesting that information. I want to get that information. Honestly, it's as simple as that. That is literally it. That is what okay. What method do I need to use here? Is it a get method? Is it a post method? Like I said, 99.99% of the time, those are the 2 methods you would have to use. Now, I said, like, so literally that's just it. But usually the API documentation will even tell you what kind of method you need to use. I don't need to, even if you don't know it, once we get to the API documentation, you're literally going to see it, and I'm going to show an example of what that looks like once we go to a live illustration. But just know that. But let's say I want, in this instance, okay, I want to okay, I want to send you this money. So this is me. I want to send you this. I wanted to send her money. That okay, use this money and help me get this particular thing. Now I'm not getting information in this way. I want an action to occur. So I need to post an information to her. So I'm posting money, and I'm posting the data I want her to help me do. So I'm going to post money, and I'm going to post okay, this money, use this money to help me do this thing. So in that instance now, the method I'm going to use is going to be a post method, because I want an action to occur. Literally, I'm not just getting information. I want to send information so that an action occurs. So in that instance now, I'm going to use a post method. So that's that here. So that's to create new data, I use a post. Then we have the put or patch method, which is also try to update the data. And to delete, of course, delete is telling. You want to remove the data. So that is that about the HTTP methods. And like I said, literally, the API documentation is going to tell you what method to use for a particular action. So now the next thing is the URL, which you are going to see here. So you can see URL. So what does that mean? So literally just means the uniform resource locator, which is just a web address. So you want to communicate with OpenAI, of course, you just type in OpenAI to take it to OpenAI's web address. Literally, that is what URL is. Just what is the location on the web for a particular app, a particular software or server. Now, so let's take this URL for example. Now, let's say for instance, now I want to communicate with you, my viewer that are watching this. I'm telling you, okay, I want to send you a package. What is your address? Now, if you just tell me you live at I live at number 2 South View Estate, Lagos. Now, once I get to Salt View Estate, number two, like Salt Lake or whatever, once I get to the estate, I still do not know. So let's say there are different apartments within that number two that I just mentioned. So number two, Salt View Estate, Lagos. That's your address. Now, once I get to that address, I still need to call you that, okay, what block are you? What's your particular room number? So I need specific location. So you giving me your house address is not enough. I need to know the specific location you are. you know. So literally, your house address that you first gave me is the base URL. But to pinpoint the particular location you are, so I can perform the action of, okay, help me do this particular thing. That particular location, in this instance, whether that's block B, house 12, that is the endpoint. Now, this will make a lot of sense now. This is my base URL, platform openai.com. But in OpenAI, there are different endpoints, there are different actions to perform. Just the agents builder, do you want to just go to ChatGPT? There are different things to occur. That there are different actions to take, literally. But the particular action the particular action you want to perform on OpenAI, you need to access the location that, okay, in this instance now, this is the agents builder. That means I need to address the agents builder endpoint. So endpoint is like makes a request very, very specific that, okay, within this host, within this server, this is the particular location I'm going to perform this action. That, okay, don't just tell me you are living at number 12. Tell me the block number, your room number. So that extra information is the endpoint, so that I can locate you to make that communication possible for what I want you to help me do. So that is that about the URL. Now, so what are headers? Now, headers are like extra information. So let's say, for instance, now, I don't think people really send letters again, but let's say you are sending letters, and of course, you're going to have, once you write it, you put it in an envelope, and then on the envelope you can write, let's say, address to, I don't know, the director at x.com. That additional information I put, like maybe from Damola. Now, so such that once the director takes that envelope and the person looks at it, okay, he can see that it's addressed to me, and he can also see that, okay, this is coming from Damola, and I know Damola. Of course, I can then open up that letter to read the content of that envelope, to read the content of what's contained in the letter. Now, that is what headers also do. Headers is just like an additional information that, okay, I want you to help me do this action, but let me provide my identity so that that, okay, I am who I say I am, and I'm writing in English. So headers are like, most likely, headers are more often than not, is the authorization header. Now, authorization is like you providing context of who you are, such that that server recognizes you. So let's say, for instance, now, of course, you want to configure a Gmail or an email workflow. You need to communicate with your Gmail account. But imagine if anyone could just access your Gmail. That's not going to make any sense. So whenever you're making a request to that Gmail, you need to provide some sort of identity, so that the Gmail knows that, okay, you are truly you, and then you can access the content of these accounts. So that is all about authorization. Now, the content type is, okay, the data I'm sending to you, it is English. So, okay, once you see it, okay, this is the data I'm receiving. So, because let's say you speak English, and you're expecting me to communicate with you in English, and I just have to speak, let's say, Spanish. Of course, you cannot understand my request. So, communication in that instance is not happening, because you don't understand the language I'm saying. I'm sending you data, but that data is not in the language you understand. So this, content type header is like letting the server know, okay, this data you are sending, it is probably JSON, it is a binary data. You can configure that information. Now, accept is like, okay, the server is going to tell you, okay, I'm responding to you back in English. So on this content type is you telling the server, okay, I'm going to communicate with you in English, and then this is the data in English. Now the server in the accept header is going to send you the response back in English. And of course, we talked about authorization already, that is bearer, your API key. Once you get to anything, you're going to understand this. Then we have the query parameter. Now, query parameter is just usually used in the get method, really, in the get method. And used to customize a request. So let's say for instance now I want to communicate with my weather, the weather map. Okay, get me the current weather for this particular day. And I want to like okay the weather I want to okay get me the current weather, and the weather should be from let's say or let's say get me the weather for a particular day between 4 p.m. and 5 p.m. Now that 4 p.m. and 5 p.m., which is the extra content, is like a query that okay I need the weather for the day but customize it between 4 p.m. and 5 p.m. Now that extra customization I want on my request is a query parameter. So literally, when you see it in a URL, you see it's going to be preceded by the question mark, or you can see somebody just put Q, or either a question mark or you see Q, and you're going to see that in when we go to a real life illustration of this. But it's important to note that they have the body parameter. Now the body parameter is like when I was saying we have the envelope that we are sending to a server. Inside the envelope, we're going to put the actual letter we've written. Now that letter we've written is the body parameter that contains the information we want to send. So usually use a body parameter in the post method. That's why we use a body parameter in the post method. Now, so let's look at the common HTTP status codes. Now, so once servers are communicating, or once softwares or apps are communicating with each other, literally they're going to give this error or this code rather that okay, if I give you this code, this is what it means. So anything 200 literally or from 2, it means that that communication is successful. So when I call you, then you pick the call. That's a successful communication. In that instance, you're going to get like a 200 that okay, your communication was successful. Now, but if you are getting anything, so 400, 401, 403, 404, those are error codes. Now, but anything 4 means that the error is coming from you, the client. So let's say I want to communicate with, like I said, the open weather map, and I make an error, on my own end. You need to come up with a 4, anything from 4. That is the error is coming from me. And again, this has to make sense, when you are building workflows. There's not a lot of things you need to probably even ask AI to help you explain. Once you just say, okay, this is the error code, you understand where the problem is coming from, then you know how to fix this. And it is very, very important, which I'm going to see later on. Now, 500 or 503, you can see 500 internal is a server error, then service available. Now, if you see this type of error now, don't even stress yourself, because you know that errors from 5 it's a server error, it's not from you, the client. So let's say you want to communicate with an external server, and let's say the server is down, and it throws up an error code. There's no amount of debugging on your end that's going to fix that error, because it is not you, the client, that has the problem. It is the server that has the problem. And until the problem is fixed on the server side, that condition is not going to occur. So, let's say people are like, let's say they're a couple now that they want to break up, and then let's say the man tells the woman that, oh, it's not you. You know that what people say now, it's not you, it's me, you did nothing wrong. I just go and fix myself. And when I fix myself, we can then probably let's see where we go. So literally that is it. So no matter what you do in that instance, so if you're a woman, no matter how much you beg the man, no matter how much you plead, there's no coming back. There's no, because the problem is not from you, or at least what the man said. It is from the man. So no matter what the woman does in that instance, nothing is going to happen. Same way too, if the man, or let's say a man and the woman are dating, and then the woman wants to break up with the man, and she's telling the man, I mean, let's just go on a break. It's not about you, it's about me. I just gonna fix myself. No matter no matter the amount of plead from that man, the woman is not going to accept. So let him just take a chill period, and then when the woman is ready, you can then try and see. Okay, let's communicate and see what is happening. So in that instance, literally, that's what all about status or response codes are. So 20 starting from 2, literally is success. Now from 4, so either that's a 401, 404, that's like a client. So that is the error is coming from you, the client, how to make that request. But it's a 5 starting from 5, it's a server error. So the popular one, you can see this 404, literally, I think that's the most common one. That means that okay, the server you are trying to respond, does not exist. So probably you didn't put in the correct server name or something like that. Now in 403, probably you've been blocked. That server has literally blocked. Let's say it has blocked that IP address or blocked so that you cannot access that server at all. Now in 401, you don't provide the correct ID. Let's say you are expecting to see Damola and it is Damola that is coming. Damola and Demola are two different people, you know. So if you are not seeing Damola, you're not going to accept this person. That, okay, I'm expecting a call from Damola and I'm seeing Demola. I'm not going to accept your call because I'm very specific. It's Damola that's going to call me, and it's only Damola's call I'm going to pick. So that is a 401 error. And then a 400 is the bad request. Probably, you know, there's an error. Probably you're saying an invalid JSON or things like that. You know, you're going to have a 400 bad request. Now, call. Now, a call command just gives you, you know, some sort of freedom where usually you need to configure your HTTP request yourself, which we are going to see shortly. But you have a call command, you know, and you import your call command on your n8n instance or your HTTP request. You know. Once you import this call command, you know, the HTTP request sets itself. If the HTTP request is literally going to fill in itself, you just need to probably just configure like maybe your ID, like just put in ID. But a call command just allows you, just gives you that freedom to literally not having to set up the HTTP request. I won't say like a live illustration of this, by the way. So now that we understand this, hopefully we do understand this now. But now that we understand this, let's go into n8n and see all of this in action. So this is n8n, like I said, is automation platform where all the magic happens. So this is my blank canvas right now. So you know, I said initially that we have all of these apps, you know. So let's sound complicated with Google Drive now. I can just look for Drive here, you know, and this is Drive. If I want to know the current weather, there's an open weather. So let me do this. You see literally the open weather map. So if I zoom in a bit, you're going to see this is literally open weather map. Like I said, it's an HTTP request to this app that has been configured in a nice UI design so that I don't have to do this manually myself. Well, let's say this was not here available in n8n, and I want to communicate with this server. You know, I want to communicate with this server. So what is that process like? So I'm just going to go to my, I think I did search for it already. So just type in open weather map, and then so let's click on this. So literally you can already see, you know, this API section here, you know. So I've logged in already. So just scroll to the API section, because that is what is going to, we're looking for the API documentation. So literally you can see API documentation, but for one call you're trying to have, I think this is not free, so let's look for the free. So you can see the current weather data. You can see API documentation, and then so I just click on this now. So like I said, the API documentation is what is going to tell you how to set up your request. So you can see literally how to make an API call. You can see this is the URL, and then literally, so this is the protocol, and then we have this is the domain of the server here, openweathermap.org, and now this is the endpoint I'm trying to access, the data to know the weather. And like I explained earlier that query parameters are preceded by a question mark. You can see this. So this is like how do I configure, how do I customize this my request. Now this request, you know, is I want to know the weather, but what location? So that's an extra customization. Okay, I want to know the weather, but the weather for where? You know, that is what the latitude and longitude is telling you, that okay, you want to access the weather data, but for what location? So that's what you put in the latitude and longitude. I can see and app ID. So this API documentation is expecting an ID from you, so that okay, to prove that you are who you say you are, you know, that is Damola that is making this request. Then Damola provide an ID. So if that ID is correct with what is in a database, I'm going to allow you access this information. So literally, I know I told you that once I see or query parameters usually go with the get method. So usually I'll just, you know, just going to know right off the bat that this is a get request. So if I just copy this now, so I click on copy, and I go back to my n8n instance. So let's do HTTP request. Well, okay, let me first do, let's say manual trigger, just have a trigger, you know, and then HTTP request. So I say get method. So by pasting the URL, so I have this. So I need to put in my latitude and longitude, you know, and my API key. My API key is just like, you know, sort of an ID. So let me get, I just look for this. So since I'm in Lagos, Nigeria, so this is the latitude. Let me just copy that. Okay, and then I need to put in the longitude. Okay, longitude. Now it's asking for the API key. So to get my API key, I think I'll just come here so you can see my API keys. And I already have one already, so let me just copy this. And then okay, so let me check again. So let me go to the API documentation and see, do I need any other information? Just look at it. So it's telling you in the parameters. So the you need to put in the latitude. Latitude is required. So that's the latitude that I put in. It is very no cancel. Like I said, the API documentation already tells you what you're going to need. It's just left for you to actually just read it. And I mean, reading API documentations can be overwhelming sometimes. Especially if you are just starting out. You're like, what is this? You don't understand this. But trust me, once you just take your time to actually read through, you're going to understand it basically. So this parameter, you can, it is telling me that okay, in this my URL, I need to fill in the latitude. Is very very important. So you can see latitude is required, the longitude is required, and then the app ID is required. So these three parameters, app ID, longitude, and latitude are all required. Then the rest, mode, these are all optional. So it means that as long as I fill at least provide these three parameters, we are good to go. So if I just set out, if I execute it now, so literally you can see it has given us the current weather. Is the temperature is this, visibility is this, the wind speed is this, and the clouds literally. And then you can see this. So let me zoom in a bit. You can see this code 200. So this is my status code. Now I told you, once you have a 200 response, that means that communication is successful. So literally you can see that here. This is 200. So if I just go back, what I was showing you guys here, that 200, okay, is success. That means that HTTP request that you need is successful. So that's literally what just happened now. So you can see the live illustration of that. And so literally that's our first example. This. Now let's go to another one. Let's say I want to get the current. I need the news. So news data. I think yeah. News data. Okay. So let's say I need the news for a particular location, or I just need the what is happening in the news for a particular query. So this site allows us to grab that information. And you can see my news data.io, then documentation. So this is the API documentation. So I just click on how to make your first request. So I click on that. So literally, like I said, it's all about reading the documentation to see how you can configure your request. So once you get the access of the API key, you can blah blah blah. So here's an example of a request to retrieve news articles. So this is, you can see, like I said, the API documentation is to provide how to set up your HTTP request. Now it's telling you that if you need the news, relevant news, we're going to use a get method. This is the get method, and again, it has provided us the URL, that we're going to use. So this is the endpoint that we're going to try. This is the endpoint we're trying to communicate to get us the latest news. And I look at if you read through again. So this request will search for the latest news article that contain the keyword pizza. The API key parameter is authenticate. You can also use additional parameters to refine your search. So that means additional parameters will be additional query parameters. Right now we have two query parameters. That is the API key. You can see. How do I know API key is a query parameter? I told you the query parameters are preceded by a question mark, or you can see here Q. So this is the first query parameter, API key. So I need to provide my API key, and then I need to fill in my query parameter. In this instance now, the query parameter is pizza. So it is going to retrieve the latest news about pizza. So so let's just do that. I thought it's very very easy once you understand or know how to read the API documentation, and you actually have an understanding of what is going on. So I'm just going to come here and copy, and then so of course I need to replace this with then I need to find my API key now. So let's see, API key. So get API key. Okay, need to log in. I want to just use my Google account. Call it laziness. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to go for the API key now. Okay, so if I copy this, so it has provided us where to put the API key. So literally you can see I'm replacing all of this with the API key, and then so let's say I want to retrieve news about pizza, So let's just test that, and see what it gives us. Oh, okay. So I think I left the space here. You can see this is a very sensitive. All right. So you can see we have a response now. So literally we can see I share all of this on this side here. I'm not even sure it's giving us news about pizza. Okay, pizza rolls. Okay, there's some information here. So literally, you can see that all of this. Like I said, once you know how to read the API documentation, it's honestly as easy as that. And literally you have the freedom to communicate with any server you want or any software, as long as you can just that server has an API documentation and you know how to read it. So let's say I didn't put the appropriate API. So I've removed the first field that was there before. I removed that. Let's see what it's going to give us. So you can see exactly, you can see a 401. So once I see a 401, immediately I know that okay, the problem is for me. Before I even read any other thing, I know that okay, the problem is my ID, my app ID, which in this case is my API key. Like I said, it's not everything. If I don't even need to ask an assistant here because I exactly know what is going on because of the response code I put here. So not like me showing that. So if I go back to this now, and I told you 401 401 unauthorized, that has no authentication. That means the problem is from you one, and the problem is that you didn't provide the right ID. In this case, it's an API key. That's the ID I need to use. So literally, I was also okay. I know that I don't start asking or being or getting lost that what do I do, and something like this, having this type of knowledge just saves you a lot of time. Honestly, saves a lot of. This is something I'll probably spend the whole day when I just started because I didn't have a very good understanding. I didn't have a video to explain this thing for me in this particular way. That okay, I'll know that okay, this is that, this is this. So once I see a 401, I know that okay, problem is from me and it is because of my ID. Then I put the P back now. So let's see. So once I execute it, literally again we have. So let's do one more example. So we'll be using a get request. Let's use a post request now. So if I search for Tabili, so Tabili is just is like a search engine, you can use it for your AI agents and all like that. And then so let me log in first. I don't need a quick server. Okay, so this is Tabili, and like I said, you don't need to actually be just look for the documentation. So this is I think this will be the documentation. Okay, so back come here documentation. Okay, so API reference. So if I want to use their search function, Tably search. So again, you can see it is telling you that okay, to use the search function, we need a post. Like I said, the API documentation is going to literally give you what you are going to need. It's just about you taking your time to read it and then understanding what you are reading. So right off the bat here, I can see this is going to be a post request, and I can just copy this, So I've copied that, and I go back to my n8n instance. So I have to do two things now. First thing is to put in the correct endpoint. I need to change it to a post. Now, the server already told me I need to use a post. So if you come here, you can see this is a post request. That means I have to come back to my n8n and make sure I'm using a post. Because if I use a get method, it's not going to work. So it needs to actually match each other. So this is a post request, and then so let's go back and see what we need. Let me just drag that here. All right. So now the authorizations, so, and again, this is where understanding. I know my very first video, I'll probably provide a link, my first video somewhere, where I talked about understanding data first, because everything in automation starts from understanding data. Everything you are doing involves data. So if you do not understand that, I'm very big on layering knowledge. Once you understand the very grassroots level of what you need to know, every other thing you build on top of that makes sense, sticks better, and you're the better for it. Now look at what we're having here. Now these are so the first thing is that's provided, the method and the method and the URL, which I copied, which is this. So the method is this, the endpoint. So this is my protocol, this is the domain I'm trying to access, tably.com, and the search function, this is the endpoint, the search. So this is the search endpoint. Now it is telling me that okay, I need to put in my authorization. So that's actually a header. I told you initially that headers, that's where you configure who you are. That's literally your authorization. So if I go back to if I go back to this here, and now it is telling you, so it is telling you authorization is a header, and it is telling you it is string. It has to be a string. Now if you don't understand string, just go back and watch. Like I said, I'll provide the link of that somewhere. Now just go back and watch that video. It really breaks this down the way you're going to really understand also. So a string is just text. That means I need to provide authorization as a string, and you can see it is required, and it's a bearer auth method. You can see a bearer authentication header in the form of bearer token. Again, this will make sense very soon. Just let's just take one after the other. So that means that I need two things now. So the first thing is so I can just do this. Let me copy this, because it has told me I need to put it in this form, bearer and then token. It has told me authorization is a header parameter, and it is required, and it must be a string. So I can do it in of two ways. I can either come to this first place, and then choose this generic, and then select head. You can see this header auth, that's what I'm using. And how do I know it is header? Again, the documentation already told me. You can literally see it here. You can see header. This is an header authorization. So it's very simple. I'm not going to use basic, I'm not going to use bearer, I'm going to use header auth. And then so literally I'll create a new credential. Now literally this is a key value pair. Now again, if you don't understand key value pair, I'm going to be lost here. But again, my first video about data talks about this, where the bearer is the key and the value here is going to be my API key. So I'm going to put, so this has to be bearer, and then I can just put my API key here, and then once I do that, I'm going to save, and then that is all. So but don't let us use that. Let me configure that as the headers, because I really want us to understand this. Oh, sorry, it's not, it's authorization rather. It's authorization. It's not so what I'm talking about here. So the key is going to be authorization, because you can see that here. To be authorization, this is the key, and then the value is going to be bearer with my API key. So yeah, so I don't cause any confusion. What does that mean? What does that mean basically? So it's the same thing here. This is the key. So I'll put, and again, it is very, very sensitive. You have to make sure you spell it the exact way it is on the API documentation. Then bearer, then I have to go and find my API key now. So let's see. I think this is my API key. So I'll just copy that and then space. So if I put this in, which is what we're having here, you can see bearer, I can see bearer space token, bearer space, then the API key. So bearer, then space and API key, and this is the first header parameter. So let's look again at what is very important here again, what is required. So you can see we need a body parameter, and I said body is the actual message you are sending, and you can see that means it's expecting this message as a JSON. Again, like I said, this thing is actually not hard once you understand how to read the documentation. So it means I'm going to have to send a body parameter, and then that would be a JSON. I have to send it as a JSON. And so the first body is query. That means what is the actual search term I want to search for. You can see the search query to execute with heavily. So let's say I want to ask my query is who is Leo Messi. You can see an example for me, and it has to be a string. So what does that look like? Like I said, this is actually not hard. Just know how to read it and to understand the data type, so you can understand how to configure all of these things. So I'm just going to click on send body here, and then so the body content type is JSON. So I can now do one of two things. I can use the fields below. Now fields below, like I said, these are key value pairs. Now the name, which is the key, has to be a query. How do I know it's going to be a query? Because again, the API documentation has provided that. Okay, see, this is my query. That is the key. What is the value? It is who, in this instance, is who is Leo Messi. So let's do that. Let me just type who is Leo Messi. That is my query. So what else do we need? So what else is required? So authorization is required. Query is a string. It is required. What else is required? I think that's all. The rest is, so all of this is default, so it's not really required. So once I have my query and I have my authorization, I can execute my query request. So let's go back now and see. So one thing to note is that in the fields like this, you actually just seeing authorization, and you can see this field, bearer this. Now, what you are not seeing is what's going to happen on the back end. On the back end, n8n automatically sends this as a string automatically. You cannot see it, but n8n sends it as a string. Now I'm going to explain, but let me just quickly execute this first. You're going to see now. So okay, credentials not found. Okay. So problem in so okay, sorry, I thought okay. So that was my mistake. So since I was already using authentication here, I didn't need to configure it here. So I just switch this back to none and let's execute again. So you can see now we have response. Now initially before I'd have been scared that okay, what does that error mean? But again, once you understand the basic, one thing about life is first in everything you are doing, make sure you understand the basic first. Once you understand the basic, every other thing you just build on top of that, you are the better for it. You can understand problems better, you can think of solutions faster because you have a very good understanding of the basic knowledge. So again, we have, so the query is, you can see they won't provide me my query response back. So the query was who is Leo Messi, and okay, the answer here is, so let me just zoom in a bit. So it didn't provide answer for us, which is strange. Give us the answer. We're just having content, so you can see we don't have an answer. Look at this, answer is null, is empty, is null rather. And then so let's go back to API documentation and see what we need to do. Again, this thing is not hard. Just know how to read, and you're honestly going to get this, and I hope I'm explaining it very well. So let's look at, okay, so if you look at here now, see, include answer, now That is another query part. That is another parameter to send as my body. So the key here is include answer. So once you include answer, it has to be a Boolean data type. And Booleans, like I said, is just or like I explained in my first video about understanding data or just in anything. You actually need to go and watch that video. Watch it. Once you watch that video, you're able to understand reading API documentation a lot better. And all the API documentations, data is the basis of automation. Everything you are doing in automation is transferring data from one endpoint to another endpoint. So you actually need to have. I mean, there's almost no sugarcoating it. You actually just need to understand data. So now I know that, okay, for me to have answer included in my response, I need to add this parameter to my body, include answer, and it has to be a Boolean. So Boolean only has two outcomes, whether it is true or false. So let me just, what does that look like in n8n? So this is the body I'm saying. I don't need to add another body parameter. So now the name here is the key. So it was include, if you remember very well, it was include answer. Again, that has to be very specific. It has to be how it is in the API documentation. So let me just be sure. You can see it's a small letter I that is starting it, and then it is Boolean. Now the rule about Boolean is that the value for Boolean must not have a double quotation. Now if you don't understand this, again, I'm highly recommending watching my first video. Look at this now. Okay, thank God we have this now. Look at in what we have here. Literally, you can see these double quotations beside it. Now, what the double quotation means that this number is here. It's not going to be treated as a number. It's going to be treated as a string. And literally, you can see that here. End date, literally, you can see it's string. I didn't even need to check this. Once I saw this double quotation, I knew that this thing is being treated as a string. But for Boolean, the value must never be enclosed in a double quotation. Because once I enclose the double quotation, it means that I've converted that data type to a string. It's no longer Boolean. Boolean must never have a double quotation as the value. And no, I told you that automatically you are not seeing it, but this is Messy. You cannot see double quotation on it, but n8n sends it automatically without double quotation. Now, but I want you to just be a Boolean that's not a double quotation. That's not a double quotation. I need to signify that. So Boolean, then I need to just open an expression. And then I'll put true. So look at now the value now doesn't have. So this is how n8n is going to send it. That means I've signified, I've told n8n when you are sending this data to this tablet, to this stuff, to this, it is expecting include answer as a Boolean, and is that true or false? The default it is false. Now because the default method was false, that's why we did have an answer. So because I want it to be true now. So it has told you either you put basic or true returns a quick answer. And you can see for Booleans do not have a capital letter. You need to write them in small. So you can see the true is a small letter T that is starting it. So I've included that now. So anything I'm going to send it as true without the double quotation mark. So I think with that now I can execute. And literally you can see now we have an answer. So initially we did have an answer. We just had, if you remember, we had answer was no before, and that was because answer as a default was default to not include the answer. But I've configured that now. All of this now I didn't need to cram it. I just needed to understand the API documentation, know how to read it, and now we have the answer. Literally, it has provided. So Messi is a professional soccer player who plays for Inter Miami. This is not first time at FC Barcelona. Is actually with Argentina. Going to all blah blah blah. So again, to just make sure, to let's drive home a very good understand. Let's see. Just in case you don't take my word for it, let's see what will happen if I send this as just true. You'll see now. You can see bad request. Please check your parameters. Invalid value for include answer must be true, false, basic, or advanced. And why I'm having this error is because the server is expecting this to be a Boolean as either false without a double quotation. You can see here it provided you that I'm expecting this as a string and include a double quotation. But in this one, just put a false or true without a double quotation or put basic. But I told you, although you are not seeing it, the double quotation, but n8n handles this as a string, it handles it automatically as a string. So when you click on execute, n8n is going to send this thing to Tabili as a string. So for me to convert it to a boolean, I need to specifically signify that okay, and one way to that is just write it like this. So writing it like this, sends this information through without specifying to anything. When you are sending this through, don't include double quotation. You can include double quotation in this one, in this one, in this one, but this one, execute it as true without the double quotation. So we have, and literally that was it. That was it. So now it's going to go. But now let me just one more thing before we finish. Let me explain the call command for you. Now I told you, call just gives us that freedom to automatically fill up our HTTP request. I don't need to set up anything ourselves. So let me what does that look like? What does that look like? So let me delete this to start all over again. So let me add this HTTP request. Okay. So I just click on import call. So if I just zoom in a bit. So okay, before we do that, let me just show you. So initially, look at this. This is totally empty. Nothing has been filled. Yes, nothing has been filled. But once I just paste it here, no, this is not it. Let me just go back. So copy, and then come back here and paste. So see what happens. So I just click on import, and you can see automatically all the needed parameters that have been filled for me. So these are changed to post. This is the URL. It has toggled on the header parameters and set it for me automatically. You see, everything I need has been set for me automatically. And then all I need to do is just configure it. So here I don't need to put in my API key. So put in that here, and then here. So you can also send this as and then use again. So let's say who is Elon Musk. That's my next query parameter. So let's execute it now. So you can see this was just very easy peasy rather. Using a call command, it sets it automatically for you. When it is said that it cannot be set. Request. Okay, let's just see. So when this is set, that it cannot be set. So let me just remove this thing. Alright. And then so you can see we have the answer. So who is Elon Musk? Elon Musk is the blah 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 da. But usually, this is actually a fixed answer. This is fixed. When you're working with live automations, this will need to be a dynamic value, because what this means is that for every time this automation, this step runs 100 million times, the query will always be who is Elon Musk. But of course, I mean, when you're building live automation, that will not be happening. So let's create a new. Let me just do this. Let me try and make it very practical. So let's say I want to create a new so let's say query, okay. Query who is Sam Altman? Okay. So that executes it. So I'm trying to explain dynamic expression for you. So initially I said that look at this query parameter here. Query who is Elon Musk. Now this is a fixed value. It means that for every time this execution runs, the query that want Tabili to execute for me will always be who is Elon Musk. When you are building automation for a client or for yourself, of course, I mean query will change. So let's say you connected this to an AI agent to be your research assistant. The amount to ask is who is Elon Musk, who is this, who is that, what is this, what is that. So for every time you're interacting with your AI agent, you are bringing up a new query. Oh, what is this? What is this? Who is this one? Now you also need to make sure that your automation allows for that dynamic expression, for that dynamic query, so that Once you're typing who is Elon Musk today, who is Donald Trump tomorrow, who is this, what is that, what is that. Now those queries can be passed to this HTTP request, and then HTTP request will send to Tabili. Okay, this is what he wants me to do to search for Elon Musk in this instance. They'll go and search for it. Next instance is to go and search for President of the United States. That means I have to change this now. So what I do, what I will just do, then I first need to change an expression, and then literally. Okay. So now what this means is that initially this was a static value, but now you usually have an expression, and this expression in this instance represents who is Sam Altman. Okay, so if I execute it, and then so Sam Altman is the CEO of OpenAI, blah 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 blah. This. But now let's say the next time you're interacting with with your agents, your research agency, the next query is tell me what is OpenAI, or who is Elon, who is Elon Musk, and I execute it now. So again, is the next query now, who is Elon Musk. Then I execute it here. So if I open this now, you're literally going to see, this is the next query, and the query was passed dynamically. I didn't need to set up anything here because automatically the query just passes to because I've set it to be dynamic, so that for every new query, that query is going to be passed to Tablet to help me execute. Unlike if I had done this now, who is just Elon Musk. Now, no matter the query I put, this is what is going to be executed. So let me make it again. Let me make it very practical. So let's do who is Donald Trump, or who is Joe Rogan. Now this is the next query. But see what happens when I do not change this to a dynamic expression. So here you can see this is very static. Who is Elon Musk. Now although I provided my query to be, so let me execute this first. Let me execute this so that you're going to literally see it happening live. So my next query is who is Joe Rogan, and then once I come in, so although this is my query, but because I left this as a static value, who is Elon Musk, I put it as fixed. So this is a fixed value. So once I execute this now, it is not my query that is going to be executed. It is the static value that is here. So you can see who is Elon Musk. I provided the answer Elon Musk. If I execute it again, this is going to be the same thing. Again, you can see who is Elon Musk. So this is it. So I need to make sure that I switch this to a dynamic expression, such that when I provide a new query, it is that query that is going to be executed. And then literally, so that's it. So we've come to the end of this tutorial. I hope I was able to explain, and to explain very well. I hope you understand. And if you found this video valuable, if you found it enjoyable, please leave a like, please subscribe to the channel. It really goes a long way to help me. Trust me, it really goes a long way. I'm going to appreciate it. And if you're a business owner and you need custom AI solutions for your business, that is literally what I do. So I'm going to be very, very happy to indulge in a conversation. Just reach out to me. And yes, so to the next video, take care. Bye.